The countdown. Alan sat in the dimly lit room, engulfed by the silence of the large, empty house. A feeble fire flickered in the fireplace, casting the only light. He held a half-empty bottle of Gentleman Jack in his right hand and a troubling letter in his left. He longed to undo it all, to have a second chance. But life isn't like that. Taking a gulp of the bourbon, Alan wiped his eyes roughly. 50 years old, married for half his life. Perhaps it was meant to end this way, 25 years growing together, 25 years of marriage, and then a downward spiral. The universe always balances itself, he thought. He had once been the happiest man alive. It seemed inevitable that his luck would run out. Their 25th anniversary had marked a milestone. They had been frugal, planning for the future, raising their children who were now independent. All their plans for retirement seemed pointless now. Glancing at the clock, Alan steeled himself. He stood up, putting away the bottle, and crumpled the letter, throwing it into the fire. Tuesdays and Thursdays were her days to return. Worn out, yet trying to conceal it. She would arrive disheveled and tired, but put on a brave face. He had to do the same, at least for a little while longer, until he figured out what to do next. Becca tried to keep up appearances. She smiled as he embraced her, despite the smell of sweat, cigarette smoke, and garlic. She acted as though she was happy in his embrace. It had started as a harmless thrill, a break from decades of motherhood. Alan was unaware of her secret. She felt guilty, having had a fulfilling life as a stay-at-home mom, raising their 3 wonderful children, while Alan worked diligently. She had embraced her role wholeheartedly. But after their youngest, Josh, left home 7 months ago, she felt an emptiness. Alan, ever the workaholic, seemed distant. She knew he was working hard for their future, yet she sensed the first cracks appearing in her once perfect life after nearly 25 years. There's a saying about idle hands that seemed all too relevant now. As Randy embraced her, his hands familiarly tracing her back, she couldn't help but smile genuinely for the first time in a while. God, Becca, if you weren't married. He began, as he often did. But I am, and I love my husband, she responded firmly. But we're perfect together, he insisted, gently leading her. She sighed, momentarily caught up in the moment, enjoying his attention and the thrill of the forbidden. It was a fleeting connection, but that was all she wanted or needed. Anything more was out of the question, despite Randy's clear interest. She brushed aside these thoughts, focusing on the present. Back home, Alan was his usual self. He casually inquired about her bridge night. She responded with a light-hearted comment about gossip and wine. As she ascended the stairs, Becca noticed something off about Alan. He appeared to be reading, but she realized he was lost in thought, his eyes fixed blankly on the page. In the bathroom, she quickly showered, trying to wash away the evening. Alan, hearing the shower, reflected on how their evenings used to be. Once, these nights sparked a renewed passion between them. She was still as attractive as ever to him, her elegance and grace undiminished by time. But recently, she seemed distant, too tired for affection. Sitting alone, Alan steeled himself for the difficult decisions ahead. Becca lay in bed, trying to hold back her tears. She wondered how their relationship had reached this point. It had been nearly a month since Alan had held her closely, expressing his love in the unique way only he knew. Their intimate connection had always been a strong aspect of their relationship, perfectly in sync with each other. After their youngest child left home, they rekindled their passion, enjoying their newfound freedom like young lovers. Becca acknowledged her own role in the recent distance. For the first time in their marriage, she hadn't been as responsive to him, especially after her evenings out. When she did participate, it lacked the same passion, and they both felt it. Alan, too, had begun to make excuses. Minor ailments, late work hours, increased travel. Becca started spending more time with friends, filling her evenings away from home. Her world was shaken when she discovered one of Alan's business trips was a personal getaway. Despite his daily calls filled with supposed updates and expressions of love, the truth was clear. She felt deeply betrayed but couldn't confront him. The thought of life without him was unbearable, yet the hurt was overwhelming. When he reached out to her, she turned away, unable to understand his actions. In his office, Alan faced a difficult decision. He had considered his options repeatedly, and despite hating the conclusion, he knew it was the only way. Reflecting on their 25 years together, he felt a mix of joy and sorrow. Their life together had been blessed with happiness, far more than he felt he deserved. He closed his eyes, reminiscing about their honeymoon. They had been inexperienced, but that week had been a journey of discovery and deep connection. They had opened up to each other, shared their fears and desires, learning and growing closer with each passing day. Alan was overwhelmed by her allure, a feeling that had remained strong over the years. The memories of their times together still had a powerful effect on him. He made a call, arranging for dinner at the Hilton, followed by a private room. His heart raced and his palms were sweaty as he ended the call. There was no turning back now. Alan was aware of his imperfections. He had made mistakes, acted in ways he regretted, but he had never intended to cause harm. This time, however, things felt different. He called home, knowing she wouldn't be there, and left a message about being late due to a client dinner. He informed his assistant, Sandra, that he'd be leaving early for a late meeting. Having worked with him for nearly 9 years, Sandra was familiar with his schedule but didn't question the sudden appointment. In the hotel lobby, he waited anxiously. When she entered, she was a vision, captivating the attention of those around. Her gaze found him, and she approached with a warm smile. "You're beautiful," he said quietly. "They're sweet." "Dinner?" she asked. "Dinner and drinks. Maybe dancing afterwards," he suggested. She hinted at skipping dinner, but Alan insisted on taking their time, starting with the meal. Later in the hotel room, Alan felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. She was stunning, different from what he was used to but enthralling in her own way. Their conversation was minimal. They both understood the nature of their encounter. Alan grappled with guilt, trying to suppress it, determined to go through with the night. Amber ensured that their time together was fulfilling for Alan. She was enthusiastic and responsive to his desires, helping him overcome his initial hesitancy. As the evening progressed, they connected more deeply. When it was time to leave, Amber shared a parting kiss and asked Alan to call her again. He promised he would. Alone, Alan lay on the bed, contemplating the implications of his actions for his marriage. In a different memory, he recalled a moment of intimacy and vulnerability. The room was dimly lit, creating a comforting atmosphere. She was already in bed, under the covers, with one side of the bedding neatly turned down. His heart raced with anticipation. She smiled invitingly at him, patting the bed next to her, the sparkle of her new diamond ring catching his eye. Feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness, Alan joined her in bed. He admired her tall, slender figure and long, dark hair. She was modest in her appearance, never one to dress provocatively. "Say it again, Alan," she whispered, her lips brushing his collarbone. "Mrs. Alan Hammonds." He expressed his certainty about their relationship, mentioning how he had felt sure since their first date and how he had saved for the ring because of his deep love for her. She responded with equal affection, promising to be the best wife, and invited him to express their love physically. Alan was filled with an intense desire. He recalled his limited prior experiences, contrasting them with the profound connection he felt with her. They navigated their intimacy with care and tenderness, guided by mutual respect and love. I tried once more, feeling her gentle hand join mine, her fingers softly adjusting the position slightly. I was overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment, unable to contain my reaction. Embarrassment and a sense of humiliation washed over me. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, Becca. I couldn't control it." She laughed lightly, pulling me into a firm kiss. "I find it amazing that you're so enthusiastic about me. I'm quite slender, but that doesn't bother you, does it?" "Bother me? You're the most stunning person I've ever met." "You truly think so?" "With every fiber of my being. You're beautiful, inside and out. I feel so fortunate to be here with you." She kissed me again, her lips soft and inviting, her gentle tongue briefly meeting mine. I responded, exploring softly. Then, she gently pushed me away, drawing back the covers. "Okay, Mr. Fortunate, I'll clean up, and we'll try again. We won't stop until we perfect it. You're not leaving, are you?" I shook my head, catching my breath as I saw her in full for the first time. Her petite figure was striking, her delicate features calling for admiration. The gentle curve of her waist, the elegant line of her figure, and the length of her legs captivated me. I couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration. She turned to me with a smile. "Do you like what you see?" "I adore it. And you?" "Becca, I love you so much." Becca felt a mix of irritation and guilt. If he had to work late, why couldn't it be on the nights she was out? She wrestled with these feelings as she considered the fairness of the situation. When he arrived home, something was clearly amiss. He avoided eye contact, apologizing for his lateness. She stood to greet him, but he seemed distant. "Alan," she spoke softly, noting the late hour. "I'm sorry. The meeting went on longer than expected," he explained briefly. She approached him, embracing him warmly. "I really dislike those late meetings." His hug was tentative, his arms lightly encircling her. Becca sensed something was off. He had a distinct scent, unfamiliar and strong. Could he have visited a club? He'd done so before but had always been upfront about it. "I'm very tired, dear. I just need a shower and then straight to bed." She withdrew slowly, feeling uneasy. "I understand. I just missed you, that's all." He nodded. "I miss you too at times." She understood the subtle jab. He had never complained about her own late nights. Not until now. She resolved to change her schedule, hoping it wasn't too late to mend things. However, the pattern continued. The next week, he claimed to be out with clients again, more often than usual. Becca was suspicious. He rarely had after-work client meetings. He didn't question her when she mentioned her bridge club had disbanded, but he seemed more attentive when she stayed home. One night, he was particularly passionate, leaving her both moved and apprehensive. She woke up to find him crying silently beside her. It had been years since she'd seen him cry like this, not since his father passed away. Tears welled up in her eyes too, but she stayed still, pretending to sleep, fearing the strain on their relationship might be more serious than she thought. In the third week, Alan's behavior escalated. He met with someone named Amber multiple times and even spent a night away, going straight to work the next morning without returning home. After another late meeting, Becca reached out to Sandra. "Who is this client he's meeting with?" she inquired. "I am not sure," Sandra confessed, reluctant to get involved. She had suspicions about her boss's actions and was uncomfortable with what she feared might be happening. It was all so puzzling to her. Alan and Becca were seen as the ideal couple, deeply in love, with a wonderful family and no hint of trouble in their marriage. 3 evening meetings in 1 week. What kind of client demands that? Becca asked, clearly upset. He doesn't share the details with me, Becca, Sandra replied. He just says he has a meeting and leaves early. That's all I know. Is anyone else involved in these meetings? Any colleagues staying late too often? No, it's not anyone from the office. Absolutely not. I can't tolerate this any longer. It needs to stop, Becca asserted, her voice rising. Sandra felt overwhelmed, almost tearful. I wish I could help, Becca. He's different now. He seems so unhappy, almost tormented. He's lost his cheerfulness, no more jokes. He's just not himself. Alan was in turmoil, expecting some kind of confrontation. He knew things couldn't continue as they were and realized he needed to address the situation. Becca, with a playful smile, took my hand and led me to a chair. I sat down, freshly showered, as she stood before me in her hotel robe. With a teasing glint in her eye, she untied her robe. I have a surprise for you, she said playfully. I always love your surprises, I responded, smiling. She leaned in, kissed me gently, then continued with soft kisses down my chest. She knelt before me, her actions tender and loving. Our honeymoon had been filled with passion and excitement. I was still in awe of being with her, admiring her beauty. Her touch was gentle and affectionate, and I was filled with a deep sense of love and connection. My new wife looked up at me with a hint of shyness. I'm not sure how to do this. Guide me. I gently stroked her cheek. Just follow your instincts. It's wonderful just watching you. She smiled, placing a gentle kiss. Do you like this? Absolutely, I assured her. Her actions were gentle and caring, a stark contrast to the intense passion we had shared earlier that morning. Her tenderness was exhilarating. Her hand joined in, complimenting her movements. I couldn't help but let out a groan, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. She paused and looked up at me, smiling. You really enjoy this, don't you? Don't stop, I pleaded. She continued, her movements filled with affection. I felt a wave of emotion building up. Becca, I managed to say, surrendering to the moment. She looked up, her expression one of surprise and understanding. She finished with a gentle touch, wiping her mouth. That was incredible, I said, at a loss for words. She placed a soft kiss, then stood up and offered her lips to me. I briefly hesitated, then held her face in my hands, kissing her deeply. Becca stepped back, smiling. That was different than I expected. I looked at her anxiously. You don't have to do anything you're uncomfortable with. I want to, Alan. I want to explore this together, as much as you want. I'm yours, completely. If it brings you joy, I want to do it. I'll never hold back from you. I pulled her into my lap, embracing her. I'm so fortunate. She chuckled. Sure, the luckiest man ever. But I'm the truly fortunate one, handsome. Sandra answered the phone at the office. May I speak with Alan? It's Amber, the voice on the line said. He just stepped out. Can I take a message for you? That would be great, thanks. I need to reschedule our meeting tonight. I'll be at the restaurant at 6. All right, I'll let him know. He's aware of the restaurant, correct? The voice giggled in response. Oh yes, the usual place. Sandra jotted down a note and left it on his desk. Your client, Amber, rescheduled to 6 p.m. Sitting back at her desk, Sandra made a difficult decision and called Becca. Becca, it's Sandra. I've found out the woman's name is Amber. They're meeting tonight at a restaurant at 6. That's all I know. Becca felt a wave of anxiety. Thank you. I'm sorry you're involved in this. I don't understand his actions either, Sandra replied sympathetically. Becca sighed. I've noticed us drifting apart lately. I never expected anything like this. I'm at a loss. Just be cautious, Sandra advised. We're talking about Alan. Try to understand the full situation before reacting. After hanging up, Becca called Margie, her closest confidant, to discuss her next steps. They decided Becca should gather more information. This led her to sit in Margie's car, disguised with a wig and large sunglasses, in the parking lot outside Alan's office. She waited anxiously for over an hour before Alan finally emerged, appearing nonchalant as he drove to the Hilton. Arriving there around 5:45, Becca parked nearby, checked her disguise in the mirror, and feeling confident in her incognito, slipped into the hotel lobby. But Alan, her husband of 25 years, would easily recognize her despite the absurd outdated red wig and oversized sunglasses. He even remembered the sunglasses from their last holiday together. His heart raced as he consciously avoided looking in her direction, not wanting her to catch even a glimpse of him. When Amber arrived, Alan couldn't help but feel a fleeting sense of satisfaction as all attention shifted towards her. She walked straight to him, and they embraced more intimately than usual in public. Alan's familiarity with her was evident, even in such a setting. Shall we head to the room first, then dinner? Alan suggested, taking her hand. Sounds like a plan, Amber replied with a smile. At the reception, Alan checked in and they headed for the elevators. Alan was not feeling his best that day, feeling under the weather and a bit drained, but he was determined to maintain appearances. As soon as the elevator doors closed, he drew Amber close. Becca, witnessing this from a distance, felt her heart sink. She saw them embrace as the elevator ascended to the 12th floor. Shaken, she walked away, then, gathering her resolve, approached the hotel counter. "I'm Becca Hammonds. I seem to have left my key upstairs, on the 12th floor," she said, showing her driver's license. The staff member quickly assisted her. "Here's your key, Mrs. Hammonds. Room 1216. Anything else I can assist you with?" "No, thank you," Becca replied, trying to maintain her composure. Nervously, Becca made her way to room 1216, readying her phone as she prepared herself for what she might witness. She quietly unlocked the door and entered, her camera at the ready. The scene before her confirmed her fears. Alan was there, clearly engaged with Amber, who was scantily clad. Becca began to record the scene, her heart heavy with the reality unfolding before her. Alan, sensing the door opening, continued without hesitation, seemingly aware of Becca's presence yet choosing to ignore it. Amber's reaction to the situation was noticeable, yet Alan remained focused on her. "Being with you is incredible," he whispered tenderly. "There's something so special about you." Amber returned his gaze with a smile. "You're quite remarkable yourself. Going the extra mile both before and after dinner, aren't you?" "Always," he affirmed. "I just can't get enough." "You know I'm always here for you, just a call away," she responded, moving in sync with him. He released her, leaning in for a gentle kiss. "You mean so much to me, Amber. I've been looking for someone like you." Before she could reply, he was kissing her again, deeply, concluding their moment together with a final embrace. Startled by the sound of applause from behind, he turned to see Becca. Her words were cold and final. "Impressive performance, Alan. Don't bother coming home or calling. I'm done." Expecting a more dramatic reaction, Alan was taken aback as she simply walked out. He disengaged from Amber, discarding the protection used and tossing it in the trash. "What just happened?" Amber asked, puzzled. He gently touched her, his emotions welling up. "You've been amazing," he said softly. "But this is where our arrangement ends." He withdrew cash from his wallet, offering it to her. "For tonight." Amber dressed casually, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "Aren't you going to explain?" He shook his head. "It's something I had to do." "Just that." Overwhelmed, Alan stumbled back to the bed, curling up as he grappled with his emotions. Amber approached him, offering comfort in his moment of distress, gently stroking his hair. She sensed his effort to mask his pain, a trait so common yet so profound. Noticing his feverish state, she helped him back into the bed, covering him. His soft moan echoed her concern. She removed her dress again, joining him under the covers. Her commitment to the full girlfriend experience meant staying by his side, especially in such a vulnerable moment. No partner would leave in the midst of such distress. Margie was with Becca when Alan returned home a few hours later. His keys still worked, so he entered the house without hesitation. "I thought I made it clear you shouldn't come back," Becca said sharply. "This is my house too. I have every right to be here," he replied, trying to maintain a semblance of strength. Margie was there, offering support to Becca. "How could you? Couldn't you have stayed away for just one night, given what you've done?" Alan went to the fridge and grabbed a beer, taking a long sip. "Why, Alan? Why did you hurt us like this?" Becca asked through tears. "I won't discuss this in front of her," he said, dismissing Margie. Margie was visibly upset. "She needs support right now." "Right. How was your bridge night, Margie? Was that your suggestion?" Alan retorted. Margie was taken aback, and Becca let out a soft moan. "Yes, and it's over now. We couldn't continue after Jean and I stopped attending." "Keep up with your lies. I won't kick you out because you're a guest, but don't talk to me again," he warned. Margie was visibly shaken by his menacing demeanor. He turned his back. "I'm going to bed. Becca, feel free to use the guest room. You're both welcome to join me, if you wish. I'm still in the mood." Lying in bed, Alan was tormented by the thought of Becca possibly joining him. He sighed with relief when he heard the guest room door shut and a car drive away moments later. He lay down, trying to find some peace, his face buried in the pillow as he grappled with his emotions. This was much harder than he had anticipated. He forced himself to remember the reasons for his actions, reflecting on their 25-year marriage. Lately, something had felt off. Becca had seemed anxious, and they hadn't been as close as usual. He noticed changes in her behavior, especially her secretive phone calls, whispering when he was around. Taking an early leave from work one day, he prepared a surprise. He arranged rose petals leading to the bedroom, where he had placed vases of red roses, dimmed the lights, and lit candles to create a romantic ambience. When Becca entered, her eyes widened in surprise, and he noticed tears forming. He approached her, gently helping her out of her clothes. "Relax, I can see you're stressed. Let me take care of you tonight." "Alan," she said softly, "just let me do this. We can talk later if you want." She nodded, a small smile appearing. He playfully chided her choice of simple underwear. "This weekend, we're going lingerie shopping." She laughed. "I like that plan." He then guided her into a bubble bath, handing her a glass of Chardonnay and playing soothing symphony music. Her loving gaze reassured him that his efforts were appreciated. After neatly putting away her clothes, he prepared for the next part of the evening, practicing patience. 20 minutes later, he checked on her. She was dozing off in the bath. Gently, he kissed her, waking her up. She opened her eyes, smiling. "I don't deserve you," she murmured. You deserve the world, but for now, you're stuck with me, he joked. Forever, she whispered, reaching up to wrap her arms around his neck for another kiss. I carefully helped her out of the tub, wrapping her in a soft, luxurious bath towel. Gently drying her, I then guided her back to the bedroom. She lay down on her stomach, trusting and relaxed. I played some soothing music and warmed the massage oil between my hands. I massaged her gently, focusing on every part of her body with care and affection. Her contented sighs filled the room as she subtly responded to my touch. Then, I turned her over to massage her front, keeping the mood serene and comforting. I was mindful and respectful, focusing on providing a relaxing experience. After finishing, she seemed completely at ease, like she didn't have a care in the world. Lying next to her, I gently caressed her face. Something seems to be weighing on you. You can tell me anything. Remember, you mean everything to me. She touched my cheek tenderly. I'm pregnant, she said softly. I hope you're not upset. Startled and overwhelmed with emotion, I sat up. Pregnant? Are you sure? The doctor confirmed it today, she replied. We had plans to wait, but I wrapped her in a joyous embrace, my eyes moist with happiness. I'll do everything I can for you and our baby, I promised. She looked unsure for a moment. You're not angry. I kissed her deeply. Angry. This is the happiest news. I could never be angry about such a wonderful surprise. I held her close, our bond deepening. Her hands roamed over me, expressing her love and affection. Promise to love me always, she whispered. Our lips met softly, and I assured her, always and forever. As our embrace intensified, I felt her body respond in kind, a soft whimper escaping her. I couldn't hold back, releasing my emotions completely. We were already past the point of needing precautions. She clung to me, her grip full of need. Promise me, forever. Forever, I assured her. After taking his medication, he made his way to the kitchen. Becca was sitting there as he prepared his coffee. Why, Ellen? Why did you do this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He replied with a hint of sarcasm. You've seen her, haven't you? Is this about the dance nights? She inquired. We had a good run, Becca. 24 wonderful years, 1 average, 3 great kids. You were an excellent wife and mother. But we've been pretending for too long. It's time to be honest about what we both want. It was just dancing, Alan. That's all. I don't want anything different. I love you. I want to be with you. Alan's laughter had a bitter edge. You say that, but our relationship has been lacking. You've not been present, and all the lies. That's not love. You've aged, sure, but that's not the issue. You never mentioned any problems, she said, her voice breaking. That's just it, Becca. I shouldn't have to spell it out. But it worked out. You had your freedom, and I found someone who fulfills me. I should thank you. Where are you going? It's Seti, she asked, desperation in her voice. I'm meeting someone who needs me. We don't have to hide anymore. Why don't you visit Margie? She's played a big part in this change. Without her, we might have continued pretending for decades. You're the one being unfaithful, Becca accused, her voice rising. All I did was dance, nothing more. But you're with that woman. Her words were drowned in her own cries of betrayal. I'm a man with needs, but I refuse to lower my standards. I can't risk compromising my health, I told her firmly. I've been faithful, she yelled in response. Maybe so, but not to me recently, I retorted with a smirk. I'll be back on Sunday. Maybe you could cook that roast you make. Just go easy on the onions, okay? With that, I left and checked into a motel. I spent the day reviewing my finances, assuring myself I hadn't overlooked anything. I had to remind myself why I was doing this. It was the right thing. She had it coming. 25 years of marriage. I remember our first anniversary. She looked gorgeous in her simple black dress, exhausted but elated from a night of dining and dancing. It was a special night, our first full night alone since our son, David, was born 3 months earlier. He was with her parents. When we got home, she kissed me, thanking me for the perfect evening. She touched the pearl necklace I had given her, her smile hinting at something more. Wait for me in our bedroom, she said, promising a surprise. The wait was excruciating, but finally, I went to our room. She was there, looking stunning in a delicate baby doll. Her smile was playful as she handed me a small, wrapped box. Inside was a bottle of lubricant. She looked nervous, but excited, as she offered herself to me in a new way. I was taken aback, never having discussed this with her. I had only playfully hinted at it, not wanting to frighten her or seem uncouth. Do you really want this? I asked hesitantly. She blushed. Only if you're comfortable with it. I've sensed you might be curious. Am I wrong? I moved closer, gently kissing her cheek. No, you're not wrong. I just didn't want to seem odd. She playfully shifted. I'm all yours. We should talk openly about our desires. I won't judge. Let's share our thoughts. I'll start doing that. I didn't want to ruin what we have. You're everything to me. She laughed lightly. I may not be perfect, but I'm happy you think so. I just want to be the best for you. I'm actually excited about this. It's new to me, but I feel ready. I prepared gently, surprised at her readiness. I've been getting ready, she whispered. I was careful and attentive, asking, is everything okay? Yes, amazing, she replied softly. I'm ready. Please, go slow. I proceeded carefully, constantly checking on her. How are you doing? Just keep going, she urged. I'm okay. I continued, ensuring her comfort. Her response was gentle and reassuring. She seemed to be exploring her own sensations, a sign of her deep involvement in the experience. Wow, I breathed out as we both reached the peak of our closeness. The intensity of our connection was unlike anything I had experienced before. It was a new experience for me, but one I knew I'd want to explore again. Her sounds of pleasure matched the rhythm of our unity. "This is incredible," she whispered, moving in harmony with me. Surprisingly, I was able to maintain the moment longer than expected, considering the build-up and the excitement of the new experience. It was a memorable first for us both. As our pace quickened, she expressed her enjoyment freely. "This is amazing," she said with intensity. The depth of our connection was palpable. Eventually, the moment reached its peak, overwhelming in its intensity. It felt like a release of all the pent-up emotions and desires. She reacted with equal fervor, her body responding to the intensity of the moment. We both were completely immersed in the experience. Afterward, I withdrew gently, lying beside her, both of us catching our breath. "That was something else," I said, still amazed. She snuggled closer. "Did you enjoy it? Should we include this in our special moments?" I was filled with gratitude. "Becca, you're incredible. How did I get so lucky?" "You chose to love me," she replied. "Forever," I affirmed. "Absolutely," she smiled. "That was quite an experience, though I might feel it tomorrow." "I hope I didn't cause any discomfort," I said, concerned. "It was a wonderful kind of intensity," she assured me. "You really seemed to enjoy your gift." "I did, more than you can imagine. Thank you for being my partner, for everything." She giggled. "You're welcome. I'm glad you appreciated everything. Let's freshen up. I'm not finished with you just yet." On Sunday evening, feeling rejuvenated, Alan decided to return home around 7. As expected, his keys didn't work. Unfazed, he tried the back door, but no luck there either. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, he forcefully entered, causing minor damage to the door frame that he figured he could easily repair later. Upon entering, he called out, "Lucy, I'm home," with a chuckle. In the living room, he found his wife, Becca, and her friend Margie. "Leave now. I've called the police," Becca sternly told him. "Great, perhaps they'll deal with her too." "Is dinner ready?" Alan asked, undeterred. Becca's response was an emphatic demand for him to leave. Ignoring her, Alan went to the kitchen, only to find no meal prepared. He sighed, made himself a sandwich, and casually mentioned, "Seems there's an issue with the locks. My key didn't work." The women watched him warily as he ate. Soon, the doorbell rang. Alan, sandwich in hand, went to answer it. "Good evening, officers. How can I assist you?" One officer inquired about a reported break-in. Alan, feigning ignorance, invited them in, explaining it must have been a misunderstanding. The officers entered, and Alan led them to the living room where Becca was waiting. She immediately expressed her wish for Alan to leave and mentioned the damaged back door. The officer turned to Alan, questioning the truth of Becca's claim. Alan acknowledged the situation. "Yes, I couldn't get in with my key and nobody answered when I rang. I tried to minimize the damage." The officers exchanged glances, then looked at Becca. "Is this true?" Becca was adamant. "I warned him not to return after his affair. I changed the locks." The officer inquired, "Is this house solely in your name?" Becca's frustration was evident. "I can't have him here, intimidating me." The officer asked if Alan had threatened her. At this point, Margie interjected, accusing Alan of physical violence. Becca seemed as surprised as Alan was by Margie's statement. When questioned by Officer Rowland, Becca confirmed the accusation. Alan scoffed at the allegations. "Thank you, Margie, for your input. It seems there's no end to these fabrications." Officer Rowland then asked to speak with Alan outside. Officer McGregor stayed with the women. Alan gave his side of the story, denying any violence. "It's a complex situation," he remarked. Officer Rowland suggested Alan might need legal representation. Alan confirmed he had a lawyer. The officer explained the procedure, mentioning possible arrest if a complaint was filed. Alan requested to change his clothes, feeling unclean. The officer agreed, and they went to the bedroom. Alan changed into jeans, a t-shirt, and a casual shirt, remarking, "I understand if you need to supervise. I'll be quick." Once changed, Alan thanked the officer for allowing him to change. Officer Rowland responded with understanding. "I see. You're saying you didn't harm her." Alan firmly denied any violence. "Absolutely not. In our 25 years together, there's never been an issue. Check your records. No calls, no threats. I think this is just an easy way for her to push me out. Her friend's history with an abusive ex might have influenced this plan. A simple lie can turn things upside down." As they walked outside, Alan refrained from interacting with the women. He remarked to the officer about the frequency of such domestic calls. Officer Rowland agreed, noting that domestic issues formed a significant portion of their calls. He explained the process, mentioning a potential arrest and the unlikelihood of a Sunday hearing. Alan accepted the situation calmly. "I had a feeling this might happen when I saw Margie there. I just couldn't let myself be pushed out of my own home without a fight." Shortly after, Officer McGregor emerged, and Alan was handcuffed and read his rights. He found himself in jail, where he explained his medication needs and was given his prescribed doses. The following Monday, Alan was charged with third-degree domestic assault. The court reviewed the testimonies and officer's report, which noted no evidence of physical harm. In a small room outside the courtroom, Alan met with a legal professional, a stressed-looking brunette in her mid-30s. She informed him of the charges against him. After being advised of his right to an attorney, Alan inquired about his options. He reiterated his innocence but wanted to understand the possible outcomes. The legal professional explained his choices: plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest. She offered a deal to reduce the charge to harassment with a no-contest plea. This would result in a $500 fine and court costs, but he would be subject to a protective order, limiting contact with his wife and access to his home for 6 months. She emphasized the seriousness of violating the protective order. Alan was relieved by the arrangement. He had no desire to communicate with Becca. His focus was solely on finalizing the divorce, and he hoped she would initiate it. After pleading his case and signing the necessary documents, Alan paid his fine. He then arranged for police assistance to retrieve his belongings and car from the house. The process was lengthy, and it was early afternoon by the time he reached his home. Becca seemed taken aback when she saw him and attempted to speak, but the accompanying officer reminded her of the protective order preventing any interaction. Alan had to seek her approval to take his laptop. Following these events, Becca tried to contact Alan several times, leaving messages filled with apologies and regret. Alan's children also reached out, having learned about the situation. He spoke with David, his eldest, who was initially skeptical of Alan's version of events. Alan explained to David the truth about the situation, including his own infidelity and Becca's dishonesty. He expressed his frustration about the breakdown of their marriage and his plans to speak with a lawyer, unwilling to support Becca under the current circumstances. David pleaded with his father to consider reconciliation, suggesting they wait out the 6-month period. Alan, however, felt the situation was irreparable, especially given the legal restrictions and the extent of their marital issues. Living in a cheap motel or apartment while paying for her to stay in my house and date other guys. Can you believe they'd expect me to accept that? If Diana had sent you to jail, would you still be eager to marry her? That's different. We aren't married. You two have a history of 25 years. No, Dave. If she was open to discussing our issues, maybe there could have been a chance. But I'm done with her. Now, I just need to figure out how to get back at her. Our talk ended on a sour note. David accused me of being stubborn and thick-headed. I retorted by calling him a mama's boy and said he should leave me be if he was going to side with her after everything that happened. My conversations with my other 2 kids weren't any better. I had to push Carrie quite a bit to get her to side with her mom and argue with me, but eventually, I managed. I'd successfully distanced myself from my children. Mission accomplished. After several phone calls, I finally found a short-term, affordable apartment lease. It was only for 5 months, but that seemed enough for now. I fielded calls from friends asking about the situation. I made sure they knew she had me falsely arrested and that I planned to divorce her and not let her have a dime. My story didn't garner much sympathy. I went to Walmart, bought a futon sofa bed for about $150 and loaded it onto my truck. It was a hassle to get it into the apartment, but thankfully, a couple of young guys helped me out. That night, I went to sleep heartbroken over what I had to do, yet feeling things were moving in the direction I needed. I missed my wife, but missing her was unavoidable. I had called her after lunch, buoyed by my 9 years of hard work. I was called into the president's office at 10. Guess who's the new director of manufacturing test? I asked her. Really? You got the promotion? Yes, a 12% raise, a bonus plan, stock options, the whole package. See if your parents can watch the kids tonight. Wear something nice, we're celebrating. I'm so proud of you, Alan. You deserve it more than anyone. I couldn't have done it without you. You're my anchor. I've got a meeting at 4, so I won't make it home early. Should be there by 6. I'll be waiting. Come home soon. I expected her to greet me at the door, but the house was eerily silent. I called out her name but got no reply. Her car was in the driveway, so where was she? A bit annoyed, I called out again and headed to our bedroom to change. The scene in our bedroom caught me off guard. There she was on the bed, playfully arranged with various objects beside her, a feather duster, some toys, a can of whipped cream, and other items I'd have to look at more closely. A note with a playful message and a smiley face lay on the bed. I couldn't help but smile. Shedding my clothes, I saw another piece of paper next to her. Unfolding it, I read, "Congratulations. You're the boss." I chuckled and kissed her cheek. "You're something else. I love you." Her eyes twinkling with mischief. "I see this setup isn't just for show," I remarked, playing along with her game. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as I began to playfully tease her, exploring with gentle tickles and soft touches. We experimented with the toys, something new for us. After a while, she seemed overwhelmed with joy. I continued to pamper and indulge her, taking our time to enjoy the moment. Her laughter and joy were evident, even as she playfully struggled in her playful bonds. After a couple of hours, she was glowing with happiness, her laughter filling the room as she experienced wave after wave of joy. Becca's breathing was heavy when I moved up the bed to look into her surprised eyes. I gently removed her gag. "Oh my gosh, Alan," she exclaimed. "I have never experienced anything like this." I knelt beside her, gazing into her eyes. "There's more to come," I said, anticipating our continued adventure. "Prepare yourself, we're not finished yet." She responded with a soft sound, her actions filled with enthusiasm. Satisfied with her eagerness, I adjusted her position, gently releasing one ankle restraint and loosening the other. I positioned myself carefully, mindful of her comfort, and we resumed our passionate exploration. Her response was immediate and intense, her voice filled with excitement. I felt a rush of exhilaration, knowing she was thoroughly enjoying the experience. As our intensity grew, I knew this passionate moment wouldn't last long. I was fully immersed in the experience, feeling a sense of control and connection. I squeezed her gently, her response heightening my own experience. "Embrace this," I urged, as we both reached a crescendo of pleasure. After a moment, I paused to admire her, then decided to continue our exploration with a small vibrator, adding another layer to our experience. "Alan," she called out as I ventured further, trying something new that we hadn't explored before. Her body trembled. "That's overwhelming," she gasped. I chuckled, playfully continuing our adventure until I was ready to reconnect with her once more. I shifted her position slightly for comfort, removing the vibrator and resuming our intimate connection, now with a newfound energy. The previous urgency had subsided, replaced by a desire to prolong our experience. She relaxed into a rhythm of soft sounds, her reactions growing in intensity as I focused on our shared pleasure. I adjusted her position to enhance our connection, reveling in the ability to bring her joy. As her responses grew more intense, I changed our position again, introducing a new level of excitement. She expressed her pleasure vocally, her movements unrestrained and passionate. I continued with renewed vigor, each movement eliciting a response from her, until we both reached a peak of exhilaration. Drenched in sweat, I leaned over her, my hands gently holding her, as I marveled at the moment. There was a sense of deep connection, and I couldn't help but express my satisfaction. She seemed completely spent, almost motionless. Concerned, I quickly untied her and found the keys to the handcuffs, attached with a string. I carefully freed her, tenderly caressing her. She let out a soft moan, looking at me with a mix of awe and exhaustion. Gently kissing her, I got up to prepare a bath for her. I brought a warm cloth to clean her up, then tenderly lifted her in my arms and carried her to the bathroom, where I placed her in the bath and carefully washed her. "You're incredible," I said softly as I gently ran the cloth over her. "I love you, Mrs. Hammonds," I said, holding her close. She laughed lightly. "That's for sure. You always amaze me," I replied, kissing her neck. "We might need a couple of days to recover from this," she joked. "I wouldn't have it any other way," I said. "But let's be careful, I want us both to be safe." After the bath, I helped her out and dried her off. She giggled as I carried her back to our bed. "I want to be close to you now, my wonderful wife," I said. She welcomed me with open arms. "I'm always here for you." We lay together, sharing kisses, her hand gently caressing me. When the moment felt right, I moved closer and we shared a tender, loving embrace. Twice, lying back, I held her close, feeling completely content and happy. "Go on, you can say it," she teased. I kissed her gently. "I'm the luckiest man alive." "No doubt about it." "And I'm the luckiest woman," she replied. "We're perfect for each other." The next morning at the office, Sandra came into Alan's office as soon as he arrived. She had called his house and found out what had happened, so she had covered for him at work, informing his boss and colleagues that he was on personal time for the day. "You didn't really hurt her, did you?" Sandra inquired. "What do you think?" Alan replied. "Of course not. But why would she claim that?" Alan offered a bitter smile. "It's the easiest way to push me away. Unfortunately, in legal matters, any allegation of violence leads to immediate consequences for the man. She achieved what she wanted, and now I can't even contact her. If she calls here, please inform her of that and don't connect her to me. I can't risk going back to jail just because she wants to explain." "What's your plan now?" she asked. "I've found a place to stay, and I have my job. I'm going to file for divorce and try to get as much as I can from it. I won't support someone who falsely accused me and got me arrested out of spite. I'll make sure she doesn't benefit from this situation." "Alan, this doesn't sound like you. You've never been vindictive. Remember, she's still your wife and the mother of your children. Being in jail changes your perspective. I'd rather not discuss this anymore. Let's not talk about her again." Alan managed to get through his workday and did some basic shopping at a local thrift store and Walmart for essentials. He wasn't a fan of Walmart, but it was convenient and affordable. He finished the day with a meal at Waffle House. The next day, her father called him. They had always had a good relationship. "She needs to speak with you," her father eventually said. "That's not possible. Her actions have resulted in a protective order against me. I suggest you prepare a place for her to stay. I'll have her out of the house as soon as possible. I refuse to support someone who deceived and betrayed me." "From what I hear, you're the one who was unfaithful," her father responded angrily. "Yes, I was involved with someone else, but only after months of her deceit and distancing. It was a better experience than with her, to be honest," Alan admitted. She was just out dancing with her friends, Becca's father said, trying to keep calm. How can you be okay with that? She lied about where she was and who she was with for 6 months. How can I believe she wasn't cheating when she lied about everything else? She should have been honest with me instead of shutting me out. She's dishonest, unfaithful, and she wrongfully had me arrested. I'm going to ensure she ends up with nothing. If you want to support her, that's your choice, but I refuse to. We'll see who ends up with nothing in the end. Her father retorted, which was exactly the reaction Alan expected. So you tolerate being deceived too? Maybe I should give Ellen a call. You sob. Don't you dare call here again, or else. Thanks for the chat. Say hi to Ellen for me. I'll be sure to do it myself when I get the chance. Alan hung up, feeling pleased with how the call went. On Friday, Alan was served with divorce papers at work. She demanded nearly everything, an 80/20 split of cash, stocks, investments, and even his retirement funds. She wanted the house and for him to pay for it for the next 10 years. Alan marked out 8 years on the paper, the remaining time on the mortgage, and initialed the change. She cited adultery as the reason for divorce. He noted that irreconcilable differences could be settled in 60 days and suggested this as an alternative. She also asked for half his salary as alimony. Alan knew the court wouldn't agree to that, so he amended it to 35% to avoid suspicion. After making his adjustments, he had the document and a complete financial record sent to her lawyer's office. He also included a notarized limited power of attorney for accessing his banking and investment information. The lawyer was surprised by his prompt response. Alan discussed his reasoning for the mortgage payment term and his proposal for alimony. The attorney said she'd work with his suggestions and get back to him. Alan felt a sense of satisfaction, believing that he had been more than fair in the divorce settlement. By Monday, his lawyer informed him that all his proposed changes to the divorce agreement had been accepted and filed. Then, on Tuesday, Alan vanished without a trace. Becca was left confused and concerned. The bills were being paid, and the bank accounts were untouched. She had transferred 80% of the funds from their joint account and taken a similar portion of their CDs. But then, Alan had cashed out the remaining CDs and investments the day after the divorce papers were signed. Sandra, from Alan's workplace, informed Becca that he had resigned on Tuesday, using up his accumulated vacation and sick leave, which amounted to nearly 6 weeks. After a month, none of their children had heard from him. Becca even called his mother, enduring harsh criticism for her treatment of Alan. His mother hadn't heard from him since the divorce and refused to share any information, even if she had any. The holidays were particularly hard for Becca. The family gathered, including David's fiancée, but Alan's absence was palpable, especially with the empty seat at the head of the table. His mother called Becca, revealing she had received a check for $10,000 from Alan with a note expressing his love, but no return address. During the Christmas dinner, Carrie's prayer for Alan's well-being brought Becca to tears, forcing her to momentarily leave the table. 60 days later, the divorce was finalized. Becca found herself alone and heartbroken in their house, struggling to comprehend how their 25-year marriage had deteriorated so rapidly. She realized too late that her agreement with Margie's false accusation had been a grave mistake, causing irreversible damage to her marriage and her friendship with Margie. The mortgage continued to be paid, and money was regularly deposited into their joint account. Becca used her insurance for medical visits and started antidepressants, but these did little to alleviate her deep sense of loss and regret. Becca exhaustively searched for Alan, questioning everyone she knew, scrutinizing phone records and old credit card statements. She even contemplated hiring a private detective. She followed a lead from an unknown number on his cell phone bill, which led her to a meeting with Amber at the Hilton restaurant. Becca was slightly taken aback by how readily Amber agreed to meet. "Have you been seeing my husband recently?" Becca inquired. "No, not since you caught us together," Amber replied calmly. This response confused Becca. She had thought Alan spent the whole weekend with Amber, which precipitated their major confrontation. She conveyed this to Amber. "After that incident, he never contacted me again. He said it was over. That day, he was so upset, I stayed with him for a few hours until he calmed down. He paid me for the last time and left." "He paid you?" Becca was surprised. "Yes, I don't offer my services for free. It's $250 an hour for a complete dating experience, dinner, dancing, the works. We only got intimate a couple of times. He was more interested in the companionship. In public, he was always a gentleman, almost theatrically so. But in private, we rarely did more than talk. He seemed to be carrying a lot of emotional pain." Becca suggested it might have been guilt. "I don't think so. He often seemed physically exhausted, especially after dancing. He took some pills, not always, but often." "Didn't you notice anything living with him?" Becca pondered this. Alan was always stoic, never showing any signs of pain or discomfort. She remembered him being emotional the last time they were together, but it didn't add up. She apologized for taking Amber's time, her initial plan to confront her dissolving. "If you happen to hear from him, please let me know. I'm very concerned. He's been gone for nearly 3 months, and I haven't heard anything." Amber looked genuinely concerned. "He left. That doesn't sound like him. He spoke very fondly of you and your children." He always said you were the perfect wife. His actions didn't really match his words, but I wasn't there to judge. He's gone without a trace, but he's still taking care of the bills and keeping up with the insurance. I really need to find out where he is," Becca implored. Amber promised to contact her if she heard anything from Alan. In February, Becca encountered a curious situation. There was a discrepancy with her medical insurance during an appointment. Initially assuming it was a routine update when she received a new card, she later discovered her copay had decreased. After a lengthy call with the insurance company, she learned her insurance was fully paid for the year and she was the only beneficiary. Alan's Cobra plan had expired, and he had switched to a better one. Curious, Becca requested her old medical statements. After they arrived and following a series of phone calls, she finally understood the situation. In a contrasting scene, it was a grand celebration with family, friends, and children gathered. Becca wore the tennis bracelet I had given her. We sat together on the couch, watching a DVD the kids had made, showcasing our 25 years of marriage. There were photos and clips spanning from our wedding to the present. Becca, as beautiful as ever, nestled into my lap. Amidst the laughter and gentle teasing from everyone, we tried to hold back our tears, overwhelmed by the emotions of the moment. To our surprise, we were then ushered to the front door, where a stretch limo awaited. David, our son, encouraged us to enjoy our ride, expressing his gratitude for our parenting. As I hugged my children goodbye, I took Becca's hand, and we stepped out to our waiting ride, with the chauffeur holding the door open for us. Inside the limo, we toasted with champagne. "Did you know about this?" Becca inquired. "I'm just as surprised as you are," I replied, enjoying the unexpected celebration of our love and life together. We arrived at the hotel, where a uniformed staff member greeted us warmly. "Thank you for choosing our hotel for your special celebration." A porter relieved me of our bag as we followed our hostess. She led us to the top floor suite, an opulent and spacious room. "Dial 50 on the phone for any assistance." "Anything at all," she informed us with a smile. "Someone cares deeply for you. You're quite the talk of the hotel. We're truly honored to have you." I instinctively reached for my wallet, but she stopped me. "Everything is already covered, and very generously so. Please, don't hesitate to call for anything." Once alone, Becca and I exchanged amazed glances. "Can you believe this?" she asked. "I'm still in disbelief, ever since that day in the bookstore," I replied. 25 years, she murmured. "You still make me feel young." "I love you, Alan." We indulged in the suite's luxuries, ordering champagne and strawberries, and spending time in the hot tub. Later, Becca excused herself to the bedroom. When she called me in, I was taken aback by her beauty. She wore a pink top with a sheer skirt and a playful thong. "A gift from your secretary," she teased. Should I be worried? I embraced her. "Only about how much I love you. I look forward to many more years together, Becca." She playfully suggested calling up the hotel staff, to which I laughed. "No, we've discussed that before. I can't stand the thought of sharing you." "You remember that one time?" she chuckled. "I was so jealous. We're meant for each other, Becca. There's no one else for me." "Agreed," she smiled. "Now, are we going to keep talking, or are you going to show me how much you love me?" I playfully drew her onto the bed, eliciting her laughter as I pretended to be stern. "No jokes about that," I said with a light-hearted tap. Her giggle was music to my ears. "What's that?" she asked playfully. "I can't believe it took 25 years for me to discover your interest in playful spankings," I replied, joining in the banter. I gently tugged down her bottoms and gave her a light swat. "I've always been open with you, ever since our first anniversary." She teasingly jiggled. "You've always adored this, haven't you?" I responded with affection, kissing her playfully. "Absolutely. I cherish every part of you." She turned to face me. "Show me your love, Alan." I left her in the top, which complemented her skin beautifully. Carefully, I untied and removed her thong, positioning her comfortably in the middle of the bed. Our connection was effortless and familiar as I attended to her lovingly. In turn, she used her intimate knowledge of me to reciprocate. Our closeness brought us together in a harmonious and deeply satisfying way. She then took the lead, guiding us both to a blissful conclusion, ensuring I was fulfilled as well. Afterward, we lay together, her head resting on my shoulder. "Thank you for an incredible life," I said. "And thank you for making every dream a reality," she responded with a giggle. "Do you think our friends would be surprised by what we're up to?" I chuckled, holding her close. "I doubt it. Does it ever amaze you?" she inquired. "Every single day," I admitted. "How it keeps getting better when it already feels perfect. I am the luckiest." "I know. We both are." She kissed me. "Ready for another round? Are you offering to assist?" I asked with a smile. She moved closer, ready to indulge once more. "Always." Suddenly, Alan awoke, reaching instinctively for the painkiller button. A hand found his, and he looked over. "Happy Valentine's Day," she whispered softly. Alan found himself momentarily disoriented, absorbing his surroundings. A large, heart-shaped balloon was tied to his headboard, and his wife was looking at him with tears in her eyes. "You weren't meant to find out this way," he said softly. She leaned over for a hug. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have lied. Can you forgive me?" Gently moving the IV tube in his arm, he embraced her. "There's nothing to forgive. I knew you were faithful. My jealousy got the better of me, but I saw you were true to me. You didn't betray our trust. Then why did you do this? She asked, perplexed. Noticing a touch on his other arm, Alan saw his 3 children. Happy Valentine's Day, Dad, Carrie said softly, kissing his forehead. She echoed her mother's question. Why, Dad? Why did you leave us like this? It was about our insurance. It wouldn't have covered all my medical costs, and it would have drained everything we had. I couldn't let that happen to you all. Becca responded firmly. We should have faced that together. I knew you'd sacrifice everything, and I couldn't accept that, he explained. I did what I could to ensure you'd be secure financially. There's $35,000 each for the kids from the 401 Kelvin, and the house is paid off. My life insurance will also help, though I wish it was more. You gave away everything. Yes, Medicare will take care of my expenses now. I didn't want the money to be a burden. It's better you have it. And the affair? Why, I needed a reason for you to divorce me, to chase me for everything, so I could leave you with as much as I could. You deserve happiness, Becca. I want you to find someone who can give you the love you deserve. You wanted me to despise you, she realized, grappling with the enormity of his sacrifice. Exhaustion was taking over him again. He tried to rest as much as possible, but the pain often interrupted his sleep. It's because I love you, he explained. Becca was inconsolably crying as he drifted back to sleep, exhausted from the effort of talking. A few hours later, Alan awoke to find his family still with him, despite his unbearable pain. He reached for the pain relief button but hesitated, wanting to stay alert. He's awake, Josh's voice announced, and his family gathered around his bed. Alan reached for Becca's hand, feeling her familiar, gentle touch. I love you, Becca. I always have. I'm sorry for everything. Please, can you forgive me? Tears, born from a mix of pain and regret, flowed easily. Becca, overwhelmed with emotion, pleaded, Stop this, Alan. Let's go home. We'll find better treatment. We can fight this together. He nodded in agreement, though he knew it was too late. I'd like that. The children presented him with cards and gifts. Carrie gave him a stuffed animal, telling him he was the best dad, her tears falling onto his cheek. Another wave of pain hit, and he finally pressed the button for relief. He didn't want them to see him so vulnerable. Reaching for a piece of paper on the table, he handed it to Becca. Happy Valentine's Day, my love, he said with a smile, closing his eyes. Becca looked at the card, a simple heart with their initials and TLF, True Love Forever, reminiscent of their time in Battery Park. She read his shaky handwriting. To Becca, my first, last, and only true love. Thank you for 25 wonderful years. I am the luckiest man to have been loved by you. Your husband, Alan. Wiping her tears, she embraced him tightly, affirming her undying love. In his heart, Alan was torn apart. He despised the deception he had to resort to, pushing her away, trying to make her resent him. He never anticipated how hard and heartbreaking it would be. The pain episodes were growing more frequent and intense, often immobilizing me with their severity. The medication provided some relief, but there were times when the pain was overwhelming. She had given up her social dancing, something that had been a harmless escape for her, a way to feel youthful and carefree. I had secretly watched her a couple of times. She was always respectful, never engaging too much with any one partner, and clearly setting boundaries. All her friends, except Margie, the only single one among them, behaved in a similar, respectable manner. Lying next to her in bed, I admired her, the woman who had been mine for a quarter of a century. I knew her body as well as I knew my own. Despite my resolve to keep my distance for the sake of the plan, I found myself drawn to her that night. She had come to bed without any clothes, for the first time in months. Gently, I touched her shoulder, and she didn't resist or pull away. I moved closer, my hand softly tracing her side, my lips finding her shoulder, then traveling to her neck. I'm sorry, she whispered. Me too, I replied, softly nibbling her ear, prompting her to turn towards me. My longing for her was undeniable, and her response to my touch confirmed her own desire. Carefully, I positioned myself above her, our connection seamless and profound. I tried to maintain my composure, fearing my genuine affection for her might jeopardize my plan. I needed her to feel my love, one last time, in what I knew would be our final intimate moment. She was my life's greatest love, the wonderful mother of our children. I wish things could be different, but I had come to terms with my fate. I was terminally ill, with only about 6 months left. I couldn't allow her to be dragged down by my illness. She deserved a future filled with happiness, free from financial worries. Her generous heart needed the space to find new joy and fulfillment. The depth of my love for her was overwhelming. Why did it have to be me facing this? I pushed aside the pain, cherishing the intimate connection we shared, a bond exclusive to us for over 25 years. But the guilt of having betrayed her weighed heavily on me. I hoped in time she could find it in her heart to forgive me. Doubts crept in, but I remained convinced that this was the best course of action. I would bear the burden of being the bad guy if it meant securing her future. Looking into her eyes, I saw the unwavering love she still held for me, even after everything. The thought of extinguishing that spark pained me more than I could express. She was lost in the moment, her familiar reactions and expressions enveloping us both. I extended the experience, ensuring we both reached the pinnacle together. As she reached her climax, I matched her intensity, fulfilling us both in a deeply synchronized moment. Afterward, as she slowly came back to reality, I saw a mix of love and fear in her eyes. Alan. I know, me too. I wished I could say more. Lying next to her, holding her close was the hardest part. Knowing this would be the last time tore at me. I felt her breathing slow as she relaxed in my arms. The magnitude of our shared years brought tears to my eyes. 25 years now seemed too brief, but I had come to terms with it. Any single year with her had been worth everything. I was being called away from this life, but I had no regrets. For 25 years, I had experienced a dream life, the perfect existence. I considered myself the luckiest man alive. I hoped she would have many more years of happiness. I would wait for her, as I had promised, forever. My comment, going out and dancing with other men is cheating. I liked it till the reconciliation at the end. He knew she hadn't had slept with other men. How did he account for every second she was away from him? Seems like she either had already cheated or was about to.